fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of the First Stars Podcast third season. Our my loyal listeners, thank you for your continued support. This is an amazing episode because Joe Quesada boards the mothership to discuss his new comic company, Amazing Comics. Now come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hello, sir. Thank you for coming back to the Traversing Stars Podcast. So last time, different from the last time we spoke, you started a new venture called Amazing Comics.
Yes, sir.
So what prompted the creation of the new company?
It's something that it's been in my mind for a very long time. Actually, Amazing goes as far back as 2005. It's something that I was planning to do, and it's a longer story for another day. But it's been the name of my corporation, since then. So at the time that I left Marvel, I let people hinted to people, letting them know that, I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I can assure you it's amazing. So the plans for the company were already in the works back then. It was just a matter of planning, getting things right, making sure we were with the right partners. And, it takes time to do these things. So rather than rush into it, I wanted to make sure that it was done right. Plus, I'm also finishing up project for Marvel. So there's a lot of things going on here that I haven't talked about. So Amazing is something that put in my back pocket again for a very long time, but especially the 2 years since I left Marvel.
Now, obviously, this is not your first company. You had Event Comics before you entered Marvel. So when
Yeah.
you're conceptualizing Amazing Comics, how
Mhm.
has it differed from your how you conceptualized Event Comics when you first started that company?
The difference is it's more I equate it closer to Marvel Knights, where Marvel Knights was still Event Comics. It was a separate company, but we had the strength of Marvel behind us. So I wanted to do something very, very similar. And I wanted to bring in some partners to help me do it. And the deal we negotiated between Mad Cave Studios and Dupuis is pretty sweet in terms of the distribution of our books in a worldwide sense. So both companies are known for doing incredible books. I love everybody on both sides of the ocean. They're all longtime friends. So it just seemed like a natural thing to do. Because really at the end of the day, Amazing is just two people. It's just me and my wife Nancy, who was the managing editor of Marvel Knights back in the day, and she's the editor in chief of Amazing and makes the trains run on time. So with just two of us, the whole going the distributor route and things like that becomes very, very difficult. We'd have to staff up, and we will staff up as we move along, but we want to be careful again also in how we staff up, very much the same way with Marvel Knights, where we staffed up very, very slowly to make sure that we had people who were sort of simpatico to our vision and the way that we work together. So, as we start publishing books, we'll see where that takes us.
So, as you said, basically, Amazing Comics right now is two people, you and your wife.
Mhm.
Are you then planning, because it sounds like you're planning to branch out potentially to other creators and other creator-owned books? And if so, what model are we looking? Are we looking at like an image model, a dark horse model? What kind of model would it be looking at?
I don't want to really talk about that right now because
Okay.
we're going to be making an announcement at New York Comic Con about some of the other books that we'll be doing. So I would just say hang on.
Okay.
Right now we announced Disciple, which is the very first book, which is by myself and my co-creator Charles Dorfman. I'm drawing it along with Wade von Grawbagger. God, his last name is a mouthful always. He's going to be inking it. Richard Easenoff coloring it. So it's a great team behind me, and I think people are going to dig the story of Disciple.
Now, we'll get to Disciple in a moment.
Hmm?
Um, as you envision Amazing Comics moving forward, obviously there's more than one comic book company out there. Where do you see the niche that Amazing Comics will exist within?
Again, I go back to the Marvel Knights formula, which is we're not going to be producing a huge line of books. In fact, we're going to be producing a few books, on a monthly basis. And the idea is to keep the quality as high as possible. And also, we're not doing superhero stuff right now. So I've done that for a very, very long time. And we're creating books that are very writer driven and artist driven. And we're creating books for two markets, which is here in the Americas and also in Europe, where their taste in stories is a little bit different. Superheroes doesn't quite play, which is fine with me because I wasn't directing my new content in that direction anyway. It just this is one of the reasons why Dupuis fell in love with this idea was the fact that the stuff that we have on our docket is material that they believe will do very, very well in Europe, and Matt K believes it will do very, very well in the States. So it's just going to be fun storytelling. That's all I really want to convey. I see a lot of press releases from new companies, right? And every time you read the press release, and this is no knock on them because I completely get it. I've lived in the Hollywood world and still live in the Hollywood world for a very long time, and the press releases seem less about comics and readers and more about IP and content.
Mm.
And those are words that I don't want to use with Amazing Comics. We're talking about stories and characters and books for fans and books that retailers can hopefully feel confident they could move a decent number of units with. So we're just going to tell stories. We are not telling these stories and thinking about, will this be something that will sell on the West Coast? And again, I'm not poo-pooing that. If they sell, that's great, but that's not the goal. In particular, when Charles and I were doing Disciple, all we cared about was story and motivations of the characters. It's loosely based on Hamlet, so we wanted to make sure the themes were there. So these are the kind of things that we're trying to convey. We just want to do good comic book stories, with action and drama, and just create some good yarns to keep people coming back going, wait, I can't believe that just happened. They what? They did this, they did that. Oh my God. And hopefully we capture, enough fans who are looking for that kind of material, in our future slate.
Now, as you said, something kind of interesting is that as is believable, the audience for in the States are not going to be the same audience in Europe. Different tastes, different cultures, different. Now, are they still going to be, is there going to still experience the same book, or is there going to be a European version and a States version?
No, they'll experience the same book. It'll just be translated. And I disagree. I think that there are things that transcend the ocean, and the different cultures. We see it in genre today, right? I mean, uh, you know, not everything that does well is a superhero book or a superhero movie. There's a lot of other genre out there that does very well in the States that also does well across the ocean. So I think it's a matter of just creating great stories with great heroes, great villains, and I think people just that's what people really want to read at the end of the day. You don't have to wear a costume to be a superhero.
Mm. And so, in the States, like you said, you work with Batcave Studios. In Europe, you're working with Dupuis, is it pronounced?
Dupuis, yes,
Dupuis.
Dupuis.
Um, what is the relationship like between Amazing Comic Books and Mad Cave and and Amazing Comics and Dupree? How does that partnership work?
The partnership, it works very, very simply. We produce the books, we discuss the stories that we're going to do ahead of time. And Bad Kid goes and prints them up as single issues, and then later on as trade paperbacks. But Dupuis gets to print them up as oversized albums in Europe at the timing that they feel is correct for their audience. So they'll be coming out in several different formats. And again, I can't wait to see the European album, which is going to be very, very cool. So it's a very, very simple deal, and everybody's in for a penny or in for whatever that saying is.
And for a penny for a
Right,
pound.
right. We're all in it together. We all have the same belief that these are going to be some great stories, and great stories I think will succeed in one way or another. And there's always a possibility. I mean, I lived in a world at Marvel where we would have a particular title, a particular character, and it just wouldn't sell well as single issues. And then you would come up with a trade paperback, and it would be picked up and by a lot more people. And then suddenly, a character that's not doing well monthly is doing well in the bookstores, and vice versa. Sometimes things do great on a monthly basis and just don't do well in the bookstore. So I think we are also we have the opportunity that if we put out a book and it's like, that wasn't really well received here in the States, and then suddenly it's gangbusters in Europe, it's a win-win for everybody
Mm.
because everybody's in. With the without I'm trying to be coy here, but everybody's in for a share of everything.
Now, in the solicits for Amazing Comic Books, uh, Amazing Comic Books is being referred to as the first true international imprint.
Mhm.
So, what does that mean exactly, and why has it not then been tried before?
I think it's difficult to do, right? So in terms of being a first international imprint, there have been a lot of licensing deals where American comics are, produced in Europe and vice versa. But I think in particular for European creators, working on American stuff always feels like, well, I'm not working on anything that is originating here, right? I'm either working on a license or I'm working on a character that someone else owns. This is going to be different. This will be characters that will be designed and created for both Europe and the United States. These aren't licensing deals. Again, I'm trying to be a little coy here because there's a lot more to announce as time goes on. We're going to be doing New York Comic Con. I suspect we're going to be doing Angoulême. So there's a lot more to talk about. And the other thing that really excites me is that there's so many amazing European artists. Some have done work here in the States, and every artist in the States is aware of them. But it'd be great to start working with them through our connections with Dupuis for some of these books and introducing them to a whole new audience
Hmm.
as well as introducing some, American and British artists or standard superhero artists to the European world too.
Well, I say feel free to spill all the beans you want on the
Yeah.
show. All the information you're more than welcome to share. So as we mentioned, the first book from Amazing Comic Books is Disciple.
Yes.
And I know you said it's Disciple. We're not creating superhero costume books. So how does Disciple fit into the larger vision of what Amazing Comic Books is going to represent?
Well, it's still an action adventure book, you know, and you and the well, first of all, the thing that I find fun about Disciple is that, unlike West Side Story, where you have Tony and Maria, in Disciple, we use the actual character's name. So Hamlet is Hamlet. Hamlet's father is Hamlet Senior. Everyone's there with a few nips and tucks and some changes in a whole different venue and different genre and a different world. Um, so, but at the end of the day, it's also going to be the story of Hamlet as a tragic hero, and what exactly happens to him in this story. The other thing is that we're taking liberties with Shakespeare. We're trying to keep all the themes, but at the same time, we're telling stories that were not told in the play. So the first story arc of Hamlet, the first six issues, is actually a prequel uh, to Hamlet. Like who was young Hamlet? At least who was young Hamlet, or who is young Hamlet in this world of Disciple?
Hmm.
And that's a story we're going to start telling from the very first issue. And if you've seen our preview comic, there's 10 pages in there, and you pretty much get the gist of it, where we, flash we start with a flashback to young 13-year-old Hamlet, and then we cut back to an older Hamlet, who is not home. He's not with his family. He's somewhere else. So we're having a lot of fun with it. A lot of fun with it, and also there's tons of Easter eggs in there, to the Shakespearean plays. But this all goes back to, again, I mentioned West Side Story. Um, my love of Shakespeare started when I was in elementary school. I had a teacher who was having us read Shakespeare, probably when we were a little too young to read it. So, I found it very difficult to read, right? Very, the language was difficult, and just it wasn't something that a kid of my age was, you know, really into.
Mm.
And it just so happened that around that time, West Side Story was being played on network TV. So my teacher not telling me anything, she's like, I want the class to watch West Side Story. Why? Just watch it. Look, you're getting to watch TV as homework, right? We were like, oh, actually, that's pretty cool. Okay, so we get to watch homework. So I remember her asking me, what did you think? What did you think of West Side Story? I said, I loved it. And to this day, I love that play, movie, old versions. Um, and she said, oh, good. I'm glad you did because that's Romeo and Juliet. And I'm like, what? And it gave me a brand new appreciation of Shakespeare. It's really kind of the thing that turned me on to the plays. So doing Disciple in a lot of ways harkens back to that, and who knows, maybe it'll, turn a younger reader on to Shakespeare who thinks it's just too stodgy for them. Um, because again, the themes are all there, the characters' names are all there, the basic tenets of the plot are there, but you know some of the characters' motivations might be a little bit different. Some of the twists and turns might be different than the twists and turns in the play.
Now, as someone who did love reading Hamlet, and I got to teach Hamlet a few times, as a teacher. Um, Once again, we're talking about a play from originally from the 1600s.
Yep.
We're writing a 2020s comic book. So, what
Right.
are some of the changes that had to be made to modernize it for the current audience?
Well, we're doing nothing to necessarily modernize it, because again, I'm not giving away to you the actual. It's definitely a genre story. Um, I would say it takes place in modern times, but there's nothing that really had to be changed outside of just really the language. The story is great as is, and the big change is just that we're telling backstory.
Yeah.
We're working backwards. Like we know who Hamlet is when he's introduced into the plays, right? He comes back from the academy, fully formed as an adult, finding that his mother and his uncle have married after his father's death. So what the story we're telling goes way back, where we get to meet his father, not as a ghost,
Hmm.
but in the flesh. And we get to see those relationships between Hamlet Sr., Gertrude, and Claudius, and that triangle. How did that triangle happen, and where did it happen, and what's the timing? And we have the Fortinbras in there. We've got everyone in the play is basically in there. As far as there might be some few minor characters that are not in there yet, but they will be. Laertes, you name it, the whole group, and they're all taking on similar character roles, but because of the world that they live in, the motivations might be a little bit different, but the themes stay the same.
Now, once again, having read the play, one character that feels, at least to me, was underserviced in the play, original play, is Ophelia. Ophelia.
Right.
Um, Once again, I don't know if I should say spoilers or not spoilers, but her fate is grim, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, her she doesn't have a whole lot of agency on her own.
Mhm.
How is she presented in the comic? Does she change from? Is she given more opportunity than in the play to be a character?
She dies on page one.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
It's like
No.
that's a change,
Uh,
but
no, there's a lot more for Ophelia, in particular because um, we introduced the day that Hamlet and Ophelia meet as young kids, again, in this world that we've created, and how that romance comes to be, and then they part. What Ophelia's fate is, I'm not going to tell you because I'll tell you this. She is all through the first six issues. What happens in the second arc? Well, has yet to be written, but I kind of know where it's going to go. Again, we've taken some liberties with things, and I think it'll make it fun because if you read the play, you go, oh yeah, okay, I see how that works just like the play. And then, oh, that's an interesting twist. Never thought of that. Okay, what happens if that character did this, which they didn't do in the play? That's the fun of this for me. If you've never read the plays, then you're just reading a fun yarn and a fun adventure story.
Now, once again, everyone knows the tragedy of Hamlet, and we know Shakespeare's tendency to kill everybody. That's in shows of
Right.
the play. As a reader who knows Hamlet, will we still be surprised by the fate of these characters in Disciple?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. You know. Um, Again, I'm sorry to be so coy about it, but so much of this is with real points of the story. But we could certainly have a conversation about this when the six issues are out and you've read them and everybody's read them, and you go, wait a minute, what's going on here? So we had a lot of fun with it, gotta tell you. We really did.
Well, you're definitely gonna be invited back when I get to read all six issues, so we'll definitely have to set that up, most certainly.
Awesome.
Another thing that you said, and I'm gonna poke at it a little bit, okay? So you said talking about characters who are superheroes, but they don't wear costumes, so from so far. Disciple with Hamlet, does that then suggest Hamlet has something supernatural powers that is existing within the comic book?
Hmm. I don't know. It would be weird, wouldn't it? Right? It
It'd
would
be
be weird.
different.
It would be weird, different, and in some cases, I would argue to say works against the play. But one of the things we worked very, very hard at was because Hamlet takes place in the real world, and even though it's a fantasy world, it still takes place on our planet, right? If they turn on the TV, they'd see what we see. Uh, so we had to look at ghosts in particular, right? Hamlet's father's ghost. I didn't just want to have a ghost walking around and not explain how this works in this
Hmm.
world. We actually came up with something that was very, very interesting that that involves some supernatural stuff, but science and nature. We came up with our version of what maybe a power would be, but it's not something that's going to bump you out of the play like suddenly Hamlet's flying or something like you know what I mean? It's it would just be weird. So it's all very, very grounded. Um, but when you get a sense of how this works, you go, oh, okay, I'm totally in, because again, I'm a big believer in setting up the rules of the world that you're going to create, and knowing them is better than anybody. So Charles and I, we literally wrote the first time we sat down to write Disciple. We wrote six issues that started as far back as Hamlet Senior meeting Gertrude. Um, and so we have this very, very deep, deep, deep backstory. And then we decided to trash it. Not necessarily trash it, but just say, this is not the first story arc. So we have all that material, locked in a vault, and then decided to start the story, you know, a little bit later when Hamlet's 13. And because it just felt like a more natural place because we'd be starting way, way, way too far back. But we're eventually going to tell those stories too, which will be a lot of fun in this world that we've created.
Now, kind of interesting. I don't remember Hamlet playing on building upon it too much, but as you mentioned, the ghost of the father does appear, as is the famous scene of Hamlet seeing his father's ghost. As you mentioned, there's going to be ghosts of some sort in your story.
Yes.
The connotations of ghosts existing in our world if it's provable and is examined, is massive. From a religious context to our understanding of life and death and everything else. Is that something that is explored in the comic book? How that will impact a worldview of a character when they do see something like that?
Yeah, it's handled again in a way where um we created this methodology that makes it very plausible that someone who's passed on can materialize in this world. Yeah, that can't don't want to give it up because this one little thing um is the thing that so much of our story moving forward and our second arc is going to be based on. But we have thought this through and have come up with something that I think is really it's very emotional actually in a lot of ways. But it's not something like, Hamlet's going insane or Hamlet can see things that other people can't see because he's special in some way. It really is a methodology by which someone can come and visit you. And that's passed on. That shouldn't be visiting you, basically.
Well, I definitely want to ask this question as well. To me, it's just a question that must be asked because it's Hamlet. Obviously, the famous graveyard scene. Is there the equivalent in the series of the great Hamlet graveyard scene?
No, not in the first arc. There is not. There is a character called Gravedigger, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Now, another cool thing about the comic book, you're the artist on the book. You're a co-creator and artist on the book. Now, this is your first art project in a bit, correct?
In a while, yeah. Actually, I've been working on another one simultaneously, which is a project for Marvel that will is soon to be announced. Um, so yeah, so people are gonna get a boatload of my artwork and probably get sick of it after a while. And in terms of doing sequentials, it's been a while. I haven't done any in I can't remember how long, but I've done a lot of covers and things like that.
Well, I mean, because everyone knows your art is seminal. I mean, like I said, Ash, Sword of Azrael, things of that nature. I mean, so it's for the fans. How exciting do you think it will be for us to get to see your work again in interiors?
I had no idea. You guys will let me know exactly, if you like it or you don't. I mean, it's I love doing sequentials. I love it. I mean, I love it more than doing covers. So I'm having a blast. Uh, because the storytelling part of it, the breaking down the page is one of the hardest things to do, but one of my favorite things to do. So it's like a puzzle in a lot of ways, trying to figure out exactly how to lead the eye and how to communicate the story before there's even a word of dialogue on it, which is usually my goal. If I could look at the layout and say, okay, I can tell what's going on here, and there's no dialogue, um, then I feel like it's been a successful page.
So, as you said, the co-writer is Charles Dorfman.
Yes, sir.
So how does the partnership work? I mean, obviously, as you are the owner of the company, you are the marquee name attached and everything else involved. So how is the partnership with you as co-writer of this project?
It's Charles and I. We share the project together. It's like no other. It's still no different than other creator-owned projects. Um, Charles came to me uh, about a year and a half ago um, through a mutual friend who thought we should really get together because he felt like we would be, creatively aligned in a lot of ways. And Charles had this treatment for Hamlet, this sort of heightened reality, and was looking to see if someone would want to publish it as a graphic novel. And Charles is in the film world, so and he was really intrigued with the whole sequential world, graphic novel world. And so we talked about it. And then I had an idea after I read Hamlet, his version of Hamlet. I think at the time it was called The Prince. And I had some notes. And before we had our call, I said, Charles, look, I give you notes on this that will make it a much more satisfying graphic novel, in my world. But I have an idea for you. And if you like this idea, then I think we should be partners and do this thing together. And so I pitched him the idea, which I can't tell you here, but you'll hear about it at New York Comic Con. and he loved it, and so he actually I'm out here in the wilds of Idaho. He actually flew from the UK to Idaho, and we had our own personal writers' room thing for about a week. And then we moved that to LA and we did like another week, or we probably did about 3 solid weeks, in different stages together. And then, hours and hours of Zoom calls to tighten everything up. So, it's really just kind of how it worked. It just working on the story, making sure it stayed true to the play while at the same time not true to the play. So, it was a great experience. And so my buddy who introduced us was 1,000% right. We were going to get along perfectly and creatively have a blast.
And so it sounds like this is because you're talking about arcs, 6 issue arcs. So this ongoing then, or is this ongoing semi, the long-term finite?
No, it's going down. Basically, it's an acts. The first 6 issues is Act One, and then there will be the subsequent act. I can't tell you exactly how many issues that is yet because it's only been outlined. It hasn't been written yet. So, but there again, there'll be more to be revealed about this as we move on.
Like I said, it sounds really cool. And like I said, someone who loves Shakespeare and Hamlet, I'm
Mhm.
excited to. I can't wait to read it. But of course, I'm going to have to ask this question because fans or viewers will probably kill me if I don't ask. You have Amazing Comic Books now. It's your own company. We have to go back and ask about Ash. Is
Right.
Ash then potentially coming back in Amazing Comics?
Not at the moment. No, no. And as Jimmy and I would love to bring Ash back. And someday we'll talk about why we haven't, but I also believe that talking about it, he's a bucket list character for me. And if it doesn't look like I'm going to get around to publishing Ash again, then maybe someday Jimmy and I will tell the story. But right now, we're just kind of keeping our heads down and hoping that we get the opportunity to do the character again. But it's not for lack of love of the character or anything like that. And Amazing Comics would absolutely be a home for Ash, without a doubt.
So I'm going to poke you just a couple more times if you don't mind. First off, you mentioned a Marvel project. Are you able to drop the name of the project?
Nope,
Okay.
cannot, cannot.
Um,
Sorry, it was the worst interview ever. But I'm hoping. Don't have confirmation. I'm hoping that um, maybe there'll be a New York Comic Con announcement. I'm almost certain there'll be some sort of announcement before the end of the year of this
all right.
project.
I'm going to poke
Six.
you just a little bit. You feel free to continue being coy. Um, is this going to be a storyline existing in continuity, out of continuity, and will this be a character that already has a title, and this is like a mini series, or is it a new title?
Yeah, it's a character that already has a title, but it involves, the entirety of the Marvel universe. Um, it is in a continuity.
Okay.
Uh, right? That's the closest I can give you to an answer. It's in a continuity that we are familiar with. It's 6 issues, and I've worked my ass off on it.
So, are you the artist and the writer for this project?
No, no, no.
You're
No,
the
someone was writing it. I helped along the way, but again, can't reveal that either. It's gonna
can you
wait.
reveal who's writing it?
Not yet. No. Again, it's been a secret for so long that Marvel's the one. Marvel's the one that's got to announce this. Once they announce it, then I'm gonna talk my head off about it.
Is this a writer you worked with in the past?
Yes.
Okay. Now you have all your fans now digging through your entire library looking for a writer you worked in the past. That's awesome. So, obviously you have the Marvel Project, you have Disciple, which I'm sure is taking up a lot of your time. What's next for you? Oh, and also, is your Substack running as well?
That's right. Yeah, please. Yeah, we need to plug my Substack, which is Joe Quesada's Drawing the Line Somewhere, where I just tell, a bunch of, tales out of school kind of thing. And, there's some art related stuff there, story related stuff. promotional stuff. Actually, I'm due for a post. It's been a few weeks since I posted. Actually, it's in San Diego, but I've been so busy trying to finish off some pages that I've got certain things have to fall to the back burner. But I'll probably do a post sometime this weekend. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. Because I get to talk to everybody very much the way that I used to when I was editor in chief at Marvel, and I had those weekly columns, which were was it Joe Fridays and then Cup of Joe. Those were great fun because I took on fan questions completely unfiltered, and answered them as honestly as I possibly could.
So when you have a chance to talk about more about the stuff and everything else, come back on the show, okay?
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute honor to have you, sir. You're fantastic. And like I
Thank
said,
you.
when you're ready to spill more beans, come back on the show and spill them.
Thanks, Jeff. Always a lot of fun, man. All right.
Have a great night, sir.
Here. Good night.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Verdant Stars podcast. Please like and subscribe. Return for the next episode when Derek Robertson boards the mothership to discuss Greaser Gemini Blues from Magma Comics. To next voyage, travel on.